Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 3, Dementia, by Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 11. We achieved integration almost instantly. We were one, but we were two, and more than that. Still trapped behind glassy eyes through which we could not pass, we sensed shadowy figures lurking behind, around, above, and below. We could not name them, and none of them could name us. But we knew one of them was the creature whose corpse had become Rex. But we were integrated, all cells in the same body. Before us, again prostrating himself, was the Nephirite. From him we sensed a haughtiness and egotism. Those were the very traits that had drawn us to him originally. His sense of self superseded his need to be subservient, and that made him corruptible. His loyalty to himself and his dreams allowed him to believe he could one day ascend to be one of our peers. This meant he would someday betray us, as he now betrayed his master. But by then, we would be done with him and destroy him, if the others did not get him first. Still, his pride burned with a malevolent heat, and we luxuriated in it. It tempted us to swat him down and crush him, but that would require a display of power that might spell ruin for our long-range plans. The difficulty with Ragathol was, of course, that a failure to rein in his ego would mean that his overconfidence would bring him down, as we intended him to fall, but we did not want him to fall quite yet. We had to be careful with how we treated him. "You dare contact with us, Nephirite?" We put anger and scorn in our voice, knowing he would use it against us momentarily. "Forgive my impudence, Master, but developments warrant a report. In your opinion, Ragathol?" "Wretched my sense of judgment is, yes, Master." Sarcasm through his voice like blood through an artery, but we deigned to ignore it. "What is so important that you jeopardize our mode of communication?" The Nephirite sat up, then rose to one knee, keeping his head bowed. He spread his massive arms and left his hands open in a gesture of peaceful abnegation. "As your wish, Master, I have recovered the vessel. She is once more in our possession, and she is unharmed." This surprised us, all of us. Given Ragathol's track record in covert operations, we had expected trouble, and the request for resources. That he had not asked for assistance could mean he had been hiding from us the real strength of his assets on Luna. Such deception was expected, but the fact that he could hide something from us was disturbing. If he could do that, what else could he be concealing from us? "How did you accomplish this feat?" "Fortuitously, one of the last recruits to my circle on Luna was both industrious and connected with Imperial corporate security. Instead of arranging this operation as something for only our people, he convinced his superiors that the vessel was an important resource. Imperial financed the raid and even now has the woman in custody. My agent is working to have the vessel shifted to Mars for safekeeping. That will bring her closer to us, and our assets on the planet of blood are sufficient to blunt any human rescue effort." We would have thought a citadel on Venus would have been similarly impregnable. It was not yet fully operational, and I was not in command. You will not be in command on Mars either. No, because Saladin's holdings on Mars are sufficiently demanding and diverse, he will accept my offer to oversee but a small piece of his realm. A prideful pulse from Ragathol alerted us to a potential problem. Saladin, who answered to our brother Algaroth, was a Nephirite overlord, strong in the ways of the Dark Symmetry. What we read so clearly from Ragathol, Saladin would catch in fits and snatches. Saladin's steadfast loyalty to Algaroth meant he would report to his master any suspicions he had about Ragathol, and that could jeopardize our operation. You may proceed with your plan, Ragathol, but you will minimize your contact with Saladin. I had thought I should avoid direct confrontations with him at all cost. Perhaps that is best. When will you go to Mars? The Nephirite bowed his head again. I had intended to direct operations from here. Preparations for the vessel's transfer to my custody and her journey here are already underway. She will be leaving Mars in the custody of Imperial, as covertly as she departed Venus in the care of Capital, Master. Very well. This improvement in your performance has been noted. I live only to serve. And you will only live if you serve Ragathol. The world suddenly went utterly black, but not in the sense of a lightless void. I felt reality crush around me and found myself drowning in a thick, swirling pool of bitter, burning liquid. My lungs ached for air, but breathing would kill me, and I knew it. I tried not to breathe and to struggle to the surface, but I had no clue as to which way was up. I coughed and sucked the fiery goop into my lungs. An explosive cough racked my body, then my arms felt something solid. I pulled off and rolled myself over. Gathering my hands and knees beneath me, I pushed up, fighting to get air. Dizziness assaulted me, and another cough convulsed my lungs. I opened my eyes and found myself crouched over a puddle of vomit, tinted with blood. I tried to breathe in through my nose, but all that did was spray coppery blood against the back of my throat. I started coughing again, then retched dryly. Pain shook me, and I almost collapsed back into the reeking pool in the middle of my carpet. I wiped my mouth on the back of my sleeve and weakly looked up at the ruin of my living room. I saw from a small pool of blood where I had hit the floor face first, splitting my lip and started my nose bleeding. From there I had thrashed right and left, smearing the blood and spewing vomit. I ended up on my back and almost drowned in what little of my lunch remained in my stomach. Seeing the mess, I was doubly pleased I had opted away from the chili con tofu and jalapeno sushi at Casa Shogun. The splintering of my fiberplast door jamb terminated my contemplation of what had previously been digested in my stomach. At the sound of the door being kicked in, I rolled to my left hip and started to go for my knife, but my stomach hitched again, and thick saliva bubbled upon my lips. As much as it made me feel like I was going to die, it probably saved my life. Coral Beach came into my apartment before the dented door had finished pulling free of the hinges. He held the P-1000 pistol in his hand, as if it weighed no more than a handful of lint, and used it to sweep the room. The gun dipped toward me and lingered through the target acquisition before Beach continued his check. We locked eyes for a second, and his computer sent an inquiry to mine, prompting a plethora of data to scroll up the inside of my eyes. I shook my head as he came erect and waved someone in from the hallway. I wiped my mouth as Andy Carter came in and dropped to her knees beside me. Hi, Doc. Didn't know you made house calls. Give it a rest, Rex." I heard more worry than annoyance in her voice, and that combined with the fatigue made me shut up. "How are you feeling?" "I've been better." I glanced up at Beach. "Carl's got you picking up after me all over the place." Beach shrugged. "You're the only one who's tromping on my operation. I picked up an interest in Mitch Hunter and his team on Venus. I followed them here." "Hold still, Rex." Andy pulled a small device that looked like a hearing aid from her little black bag. She inserted it into my right ear. I heard some squeals before it, and some diagnostic circuitry agreed on communication protocols and started sharing data. "In a couple of minutes, I'll know how badly you're hurt." "Gotcha, Doc." I shivered as Beach completed a recon of my apartment, that in spite of the fact that my onboard systems had told him there had been no intruders during my fugue. Beach relaxed slightly, which was to say he pointed his bullpup pistol at the ceiling instead of keeping it leveled and ready to spray the room. "All clear." "How can you tell? My bedroom's a mess." He shrugged. "I was negative, and it wasn't that bad. New chasseurs are generally messy." I raised an eyebrow. "Your first place like that?" "Nope." Beach had always struck me as one of those a place for everything and everything in its place, or else kind of people. "Why weren't you messy? Most new chasseurs find they are more concerned with who they are than appearances." "And you weren't?" "No." Beach gave me a smile that twisted up my guts again. "Most chasseurs are recruited as you were. I volunteered." "You asked for them to do you?" Beach nodded slowly. "I'm a perfectionist, Dent. Dr. Chadrapuri made me perfect, so you never forgot who you were." "My name is different. Some of my attitudes have changed, but I have built myself on a foundation of who I was. After all, who and what we are compromise the only concrete rules to the fact that we are alive." Andy plucked the device from my ear and plugged it into a handheld diagnostic interpreter. The words filled the small LCD display. "Sorry to interrupt what I am certain will be a fascinating romp through existentialism, but the test results are in. Your nose is broken, and you have a hematoma coming up on the left side of your face. Your eyes are fine, but you're going to look like you lost a boxing match with Beach's bigger brother." I grinned at Beach. "You have a brother?" "An Attila unit was assigned to me. It is accompanying me slower members of our party." Beach looked as if he enjoyed having one of the fully robotic war machines following him around as much as I did. Part of my training had involved working with an Attila partner in some exercises, but the automatons were really designed for mass carnage, while I preferred to take a more low-key approach. "Rex, you're a bit dehydrated, which is to be expected. Your electrolytes are off and you need to get some rest." Andy reached out and gingerly touched the bridge of my nose. "Does that hurt?" "Not really. Dull ache. Do you need to set it?" "It looks okay." I reached up and grabbed her hand, then stared seriously into her eyes. "Doc, I want it to look smashing, not smashed." Andy laughed and withdrew her hand from mine. "No damage done to your psyche? Ego's a bit bruised. I don't like having friends come over and find me lying in a pool of vomit." "Do that often, do you?" Andy stood and walked over to the sink to wash her hands off. "Sit in your own vomit, that is." "Well, Cardinal knows I don't have friends over." Beach looked down at me. "You'd have to have friends first, wouldn't you?" "Oh, you were a comedian before you had Cybertronic spackle and cable you. Or no jokes that would just slay you." I was about to tell him to fire away and put me out of my misery when a hulking creature ducked its head and twisted its shoulders sideways to get into my apartment. The synth dermis covering it made the Attila a bit more pale than Beach, Beach's Venusian tan being the reason for his bronze color. The Attila's blonde hair had been trimmed very short, and his blue eyes vibrated back and forth for a moment as the robot digitized the apartment. Aside from the robot's size and the stupid grin it wore, the most remarkable thing about it was that its hands were free of weapons. Instead of any death-dealing devices, the Attila bore 2 mesh bags, bulging with everything from first aid ointments, bandages, and medications, to enough cleaning solutions to sterilize all of Arantia's tray, where my apartment was located. I had no doubt the Attila had analyzed each item as it placed it in the bag, and now knew which ones to combine together to create hideous explosives. But the fact that he had not begun to do so surprised me. Even more surprising, Miss Wickersham followed the Attila through the door. She wore a white sleeveless blouse, knotted tight above her navel, and a pair of khaki shorts that displayed her long legs to great advantage. She smiled sweetly at me, as if I were a date coming to take her out, not a man wallowing in blood and partially digested food. "What's she doing here?" Andy shook her head. I suppose she was sent to help clean up. Great. I held my arms out and felt my sodden shirt pull away from my chest. She can start with me. One place is as good as another. Miss Wickersham folded her arms. Take off your clothes. What little blood hadn't flowed out of me through my nose rose to my cheeks in a blush. Miss Wickersham. I'll do it, Dent, or she'll toss you and your clothes in a washing machine. I sneered at him. I'm hand wash only. And drip dry. Beach shook his head. Get going or I'll have abominable shuck you out of your clothes. I pulled my shirt off and used the dry part to wipe my chest. Maddie, will you run a bath for me? Certainly, Mr. Dent. As she marched off to the bedroom and the master bath beyond, I nodded toward the others. Thanks for coming, but I think I can take care of myself now. Gotta get cleaned up. Beach finally slipped his P-1000 into the holster beneath his left arm. Well, I'm sure you'd love Miss Wickersham to fulfill your fantasies, but we've got orders to get you back to headquarters as soon as you're able. I put that at a 5-minute shower away. So they did get her. Beach's head came up warily, but he said nothing. Andy noticed his silence and shrugged. You have things to discuss. She headed for the door. I can find my own way back, gentlemen. I pointed at the Attila. Ash, see that she gets to Cybertronic safely. It occurred to me that Cybertronics, having let Andy out of ARD, marked their concern over my condition. Mr. Beach and Ash had been sent out to safeguard her more than worry about me. For that I was thankful, because I didn't want anything to happen to Andy. After the two of them left, I turned to Beach again. Capital lost Lorraine Coven to an operation tonight, right? She's gone? That's about the size of it. We don't know where she's gotten to, nor who has her. I tap my head. I do, courtesy of a Nephirite who thinks he's brilliant. Beach's eyes narrowed. The Dark Legion. Good. I haven't shot anything since my return to Luna, and these heretics make just the greatest of targets. Mutant Chronicles. Fiction. The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy. Volume 3. Dementia. By Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 11. End